Well, welcome to Tim's Take. And today we have a very special guest, is Dr. Kevin Bradley. He's a professor of plant science and technology in weed science, one of my favorite subjects, and I've taught Kevin everything that he knows. Thanks for being here, Kevin. And what brought you to Missouri from the east and south?
It's a long time ago, so 20 years been here. This is my 20th year.
Wow.
And basically the job, I could answer it in that short of a sentence, but I was coming out of grad school and a short postdoc at Virginia Tech, and at that time, back in 2003, it was a different world. We were kind of in the Roundup Ready era, and there wasn't a lot of jobs out there, and I think there were two, and I interviewed for this one. I knew that I wanted to do work at a university and extension in particular, and this job was exactly what I wanted. And so, to be honest with you, the first time I stepped foot in the state of Missouri was when I came to interview. But we've been here for 20 years and raised 3 kids here, and we consider it home now.
Wonderful. Well, we're glad that you're here. And the nice thing about weed science is every year is different. It seems like we have challenges each year, and I looked at your slideshow, there's no silver bullets, so we constantly have to change. And 2022 was a very typical year. We had our challenges. What was some of the major challenges that we had in 2022?
Well, like you said, it's not really different from any other year that we've experienced, but some years when we say we have drought, it's across the whole state, and that really did not occur this year. We had a drought in certain areas, but there were certain other areas that were just fine and did pretty well. So one thing that comes to mind about last year was the sporadic rainfall and the poor conditions in certain areas, and that often results in not so great weed control when we're trying to kill drought-stressed weeds and all of that. But overall, last year, one thing that is true for the entire state and beyond, probably true for next year as well, is input prices. And the cost of herbicide programs is going up, and not only that, but just supply and getting certain things that we wanted. Now, I think that is getting better, and we may not have as many problems with that in 2023. But in 2022, there were certainly some supply and demand issues that we couldn't get the products that were needed for various reasons. There was a storm that hit a plant in Louisiana or somewhere and created some supply problems with glufosinate, I believe it was, Liberty products. But at any rate, this whole thing of just kind of coming out of COVID, it certainly affected farmers and weed control overall, just like it's affected everything.
And you don't want just a single, I'm going to go 100% post-emergent. You want to have different tools in your toolbox, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the problem. I feel like we've come out of that, but, farmers got a lot of things to worry about, and there's, weed control is just one of them. And so I hate to say this, but I feel like we're kind of fighting some of the same battles we used to just because of price. And that is the kind of going away from all the things we've been preaching towards, just doing a post-only kind of approach or something like that. But, the vast majority of farmers in Missouri know how bad our resistant problems are, and because they've lived through it. And so probably way more than 90-some% are doing a 2-pass and following, for the most part, following most of the things we're preaching, I hope. So.
Sure. Of course, so you could say when you came to Missouri, weed control was easy. And you've made it harder since you've been here.
I've made it harder, and I've made the problem worse. Water hemp is definitely worse today than when I started. I've spent 20 years working on this weed, and it has won.
No.
But yeah, weed control was much simpler. We were still in that mindset of, hey, I can just get away with spraying this one thing across the whole acre. And at that time, for the most part, it worked. But when I came here, literally sitting on my desk was a note, and I came here August 15th, 2003. Of course, it was probably, kind of too late in the season to do anything about it, but there was a note saying I wish I had kept that. That would have been really something, but it said, there's a farmer north of Kansas City Airport, this place called Weston, Missouri, that has a water hemp population that he says he can't control anymore with glyphosate or Roundup. And lo and behold, I never knew how big a deal that little note was, because we spent the next summer, we went and visited with the farmer. We went to the location, spent several years doing research, and that turned out to be the first official glyphosate-resistant water hemp population ever discovered anywhere in the Midwest, the world, whatever. And it just ballooned from there, from glyphosate to we've just seen every kind of resistance pop up since then. It's a tremendous weed. You've got to have some respect for it.
Definitely do have some respect for it. I didn't even know what that weed was probably 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And this came about. So that really gets into what we really want to talk about is 2023 and beyond. And if you're a person like me, I got busy this summer, and I was a week late applying my post-emergent herbicides to my soybeans. So I got lots of burn down, but then they came back. Mm-hmm. What does a person do?
Yeah, unfortunately, you're kind of behind the eight ball at that point. So size is huge with water hemp, the size of the application. And then, we tend to say, if you tick it off and don't kill it the first time, you're probably doomed from that point on. You're not going to, there's all kinds of physiological responses that goes on inside that plant that kind of hardens it off to most herbicide applications after that time. So, we want a residual and down pre-emergence, and we want to come back in a timely post-emergence with effective products, which there seem to be fewer and fewer. But you just hit on one of the main calls I get year after year after year, and there's not a lot of good answers. It turns into revenge, and sometimes it turns into wasted money. Like they just want to go after it with something just because they feel like they should have killed it, and it was probably already resistant to what we're going after it with, and that's just not going to work. So
you mentioned that revenge, and also that sometimes the effect of the herbicide on the crop plant is more than what the weed competition is.
Yeah, some of the things we're spraying can cause some burn and necrosis on the soybeans itself, it can just turn into it's just not a good scenario at all. So
when the labels say don't apply in reproduction, they mean that.
Yeah,
there's a reason for that.
There's research behind that. There's sometimes on those labels, I'm afraid that there needs to be more research behind some of the things, but there's definitely research behind the fact that you can't spray at R2 or R3, and you can be causing pod abortion and all kinds of things, and so there's definite reasons behind all that.
Yeah, and what I was thinking of the most is shatter cane. It seems to come up constantly. Mm-hmm. And late season shatter cane, it looks terrible, but you almost have to live with it.
Yeah, and so late season yield loss is nowhere close to what early season yield loss is. Weeds compete more during the early season, and crops are more susceptible to early season yield loss. So what you're saying is exactly right. You can take. I mean, obviously we don't like it, or we might want to try to get rid of it, and there's numerous ways we can do that, by roguing or stuff like that. But late season weeds are not going to cause the degree of yield loss that we see early season.
All right. Well, that's good to know, but it doesn't make you feel better when you see the weeds out there.
Yeah.
So you've come up with something easy to remember about weed management beyond 2023. It's MIZ.
MIZ.
So tell us about that.
Well, whenever we can, we try to go into farmers and just leave them with something to remember. So I don't know how often I do good at that, but this year I created something that I'll be preaching to my groups for the rest of the next 2 months that I'm doing winter meeting season, and it's MIZ, and the M stands for more complex labels and registrations, and that's definitely not just a 2023 thing. That's a 2023 and beyond. We're going to see things on herbicide labels, requirements that we've never seen before, and I know farmers don't like it, but it's just, it doesn't really matter whether we like it or not. It's just where we are, and so there's a pick list of mitigation measures that is going to be on a lot of labels. Anything that comes before the EPA from now on, starting in 2022, they're really examining endangered species and the effects on endangered species, and all of this is happening because of the Endangered Species Act. But at any rate, we kind of got surprised last spring, and all of a sudden there was like 7 or 8 counties in southwest Missouri that they said, well, you can't spray these particular products in anymore, these enlist products. And if you know anything about what's going on in soybean right now, usually you're either enlist or you're extend. Those are your 2 choices, and it determines your seed and everything else. And a lot of farmers had already bought enlist seed, and they were told, hey, you can't spray. Well, it was all based on ESA, Endangered Species Act, the potential impact on endangered species, and the fact that EPA this is the road that they're having to go down now. Some of your listeners, and you as well, may have heard of something about atrazine that might be coming in the future. That's all because of ESA and endangered species as well. And every new herbicide that gets registered, not just herbicide, pesticide. So every new thing that gets registered in the foreseeable future is going to go under this scrutiny of, can it have potential effects on endangered species? And if it does, the choices are, we just pull it out of these counties that have these endangered species, which is what happened in southwest Missouri, or we add these mitigation measures onto the label where these farmers have to determine what kind of soil type they have. That tells them how many points they have to meet, and then they have a point system where they have to add up to a certain number of points to abide by these labels. And so it's way more complicated than anything we've ever done before.
And who enforces this?
Yeah, so that's the number one question. So the departments of ag in the United States really don't want any part of this. But the question that always comes back is, who is enforcing it? And right now, the EPA, quite frankly, can't even answer that question. But the label is the law, and especially our commercial retailers that go out there and spray as their business, they can't afford to do something wrong and then get sued because of it and all of that. So I know farmers have that gut reaction. You're a farmer at heart, Tim, so you have that gut reaction.
Yes.
But it's not the right question to ask, Tim, to say who enforces it. It still is the law, and it's just probably going to lead us down a bad road to ignore what's going to be on these labels. So.
Do you think if we've been having good stewardship in the past, that those are going to be probably to get us the points that we need?
So lucky for us so far, many of the mitigation measures are things we're doing already. For example, you get like 2 points for just for just having it in no-till, buffer strips, the area around the field. If you've got like grass waterways, or you've got like certain feet of grass buffer around your field, that gives you a certain number of points. And so there's all these different things that several of them, yes, we are doing already. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
That we got to watch out for that, but to continue to do these good practices, and I think the general public should realize that farmers do good job, because it's their business. It's economical to do a good job, and these, as you mentioned earlier, these pesticides are expensive.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't want to over apply or under apply.
Yeah.
All right, so that's interesting. Now, the I is an integrated approach to weed science. So not one silver bullet, huh?
No, we have to move away from that, and that's been my biggest message for a decade or more. So by integrated, I mean things that, this is where a lot of Missouri farmers think I'm crazy, but I think it means things other than just herbicides. And so for the past decade or more, the entire focus of my program has been, what else can we do that basically keeps weed seed from going back into the soil? And so we've evaluated these on-combine seed destruction devices. Called this one we evaluated is called the Seed Terminators. Another one called a Ready Cop. They're huge in Australian agriculture. They're getting adopted a little more in Canadian agriculture. They've barely made a footprint impact in U.S. agriculture, and I'm not sure why. But there are a few farmers in the United States, literally 2 or 3, that have purchased these and put them on their machines. So the whole concept, it's a hammer mill, a roller mill in the back of the combine, and all the chaff and weed seed that you harvest goes through and into the combine and into this mill, and it grinds those weed seeds up, and so what you have coming out the back is no longer viable. So that's one thing we've looked at, and for Missouri farmers and beyond. And then the most recent thing we're looking at is electrocution for weed control. And again, a lot of people might think that's the silliest thing I've ever heard in my life, but if we can do anything, I'll pretty much evaluate any possible idea if it involves keeping seed from going back into the soil, specifically water hemp or Palmer amaranth. But and what that means is it's not doing away with herbicides. It's not saying that we're ever going to go there, but it's just we need things other than just herbicides, because it's not sustainable. Water hemp has resistance to 7 different classes of herbicides right now. Palmer amaranth has resistance to 9 different classes of herbicides. We're running out of options, and there's really nothing in the tank. There's no great new solution. So I think anybody that looks at this with a kind of unbiased view would say, why am I going to rely on herbicide companies to solve a herbicide resistance weed problem? Because they got skin in the game to sell their product and make more herbicides. But at some point we're going to run out, and we already pretty much passed that point. And so we look at things like cover crops and say they are a tool, they're an integrated approach. We look at things like even site-specific spraying with drones, see and spray, electrocution, roller mills. I mean, anything you can come up with, we'll try to figure it out and test it. Robotics. I think robotics has got a role in the future. So we want to be on that wagon of looking at all these possibilities, and not saying that Farmer John is ever going to have to give up his herbicide, but someday he's going to have some things to supplement his weed control.
Well, one of the big points you made on the seed terminator, especially, was reducing the seed number.
Yeah.
How long do the seeds last in the soil?
Yeah, so obviously it varies by species, but we believe one of the weaknesses of water hemp, if it has any, one of the few, is that it's fairly short-lived in the soil, the seed. So only about 4 or 5 years, and it's no longer viable. Now you can compare that with some things like velvet leaf or foxtail, some other pretty common weeds, and they might live for 20, 30 years in the soil. So we feel like it's kind of a weakness that they're only going to live 4 or 5 years. So if we can keep seed from going back into that soil for 4 or 5 years, we can really get our water hemp problem manageable, under control, I guess. And so that's kind of what we're targeting. It's not just water hemp. I realize I talk a lot about water hemp, but that's our number one weed problem, and it has been for 20 years. And so
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Did we, back in the old days when we did a lot of moldboard plowing, was that a good way to get rid of some? I mean, to bury them and get out of the weed, the germination zone.
Yeah. So the second weakness, and I only really know of two, and I already told you one. So the second one is actually that water hemp seed doesn't come up from low soil depths, and so we led a multi-state project. I don't really like to talk too much about the results of this, Tim, because I want our soil to stay where it is.
Right,
but
me too.
So I don't, if a farmer asks me one-on-one, I'll say, yes, here's what we found. But basically what we found is moldboard plowing will bury water hemp seed to a depth that it doesn't come up. And it is a very much an effective tool, but my concern is all of our soil being in the Mississippi.
Right.
Yeah. So
well, that would be a last ditch effort,
Yeah.
and you have to follow up with a cover crop of it immediately.
Right, exactly.
The
I agree 100%.
conditions would have to be just ideal.
The other thing we found in that study, though, it was five or six states, and we had moldboard plow versus vertical tillage versus chisel plow versus disc. Basically, none of those other things made a difference.
Oh, really?
Moldboard plow was it.
Oh, wow.
We're not burying water hemp seed deep enough with anything else that we till with. So my take home is why till? Just go with no till, or if you really have it bad, go moldboard plow once and get it under control and never go back to it again. Yeah. So.
And then don't go back to those same practices that resulted in that.
Right.
All right. Kevin, when you're also talking about not letting the weeds go to seed, back before we had glyphosate resistant crops, corn and soybean, we never had perfectly clean soybean and cornfields. But what we always had to do was go back and walk through them and pull up the weeds. For the big reason is to keep them from going to seed. Yeah. So we're really back into that now. We just had this period that farming was kind of easy.
We got spoiled.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, I think it's been described as a once in a century, once in a lifetime herbicide and technology. Nobody can dispute that. Glyphosate and Roundup Ready was just phenomenal there for, I don't know the exact period of time. It depends on where you were in the country or whatever, but let's just say a decade or so. But we are not in that situation anymore.
but what it did do, it allowed no-till to flourish.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of that, we've got a lot more no-till, which is fantastic. Now, probably the electrocution of the weeds seemed to be the most far-fetched, but that can be very effective also.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting project. We teamed up. I don't remember how exactly I found out, but it was probably like 4 or 5 years ago. I found out that one of the main manufacturers of electrocution implements in the U.S., and I think they sell in Canada and Mexico, and so in North America, is based in Sedalia, Missouri. And the company is called Old School Manufacturing, but the product is called the Weed Zapper. And so I just thought, hey, we've got a guy or company in Missouri that's doing this. We should team up and and look at what this could do in kind of conventional agriculture systems. So, I mean, I just want to be clear. Like, so they primarily market their device right now to organic growers, specialty crop markets. It's not for the 2,000 acre soybean farmer. And my whole approach to it was, can we ever get there? Can we ever have something that might be for the 2,000 acre soybean farmer for water hemp that's sticking above the soybeans in August, and to do what exactly you just said is to keep that seed from going back in. So we've learned a lot. I think it might have a place in the future. I think we need some engineers. So we've got a lot of biological data that says we can electrocute water hemp, we can kill it, we can keep it from producing seed altogether, or if we electrocute water hemp that's got seed on it, which this is amazing to me. We're going really late in the season and we're electrocuting a water hemp plant that already has water hemp seed on it. We can reduce the viability of that seed by about 67% or so. So to me, that's still worth it. But the thing that I say we need engineers for is if it's ever going to go anywhere in, my vision was always, could a MFA or some other retailer that does custom spraying, could they offer this as a service to get rid of water hemp that they failed, that they can't do anything else? And right now, I think the biggest boom that the electrocution boom that is on the weed zapper is like 40 feet.
Okay.
So it's probably not big enough yet, and it requires quite a bit of horsepower. I talk about like 200 some horsepower for that 40-foot boom. So I don't know how many bean fields we're going to get over, but there's smart people that figure that part out.
But for a situation where accidents happen, you've got a big escape. You don't want to let these water hemp or even mare's tail go to seed because it'll set you back several years.
Yeah.
So this is a great tool in that toolbox.
Yeah,
and that's great.
It's coming. I think it's just got. The good thing is I've seen improvement. This company we're working with is improving their implement every single year. They find things, they tweak things, they make it better the next year, and so I think the future's got some good options for us.
Yeah, that is good. And it also helps folks that maybe want to go the more conventional type grain production too, not using the GMOs and such. And the other one that you mentioned was cover crops. Now, cover crops can help keep light penetration and some of the weeds from germinating, or
yeah. So I think we've got great cover crop adoption in the state of Missouri. I think Rob Meyer says we may be leading as far as on a percentage basis of our cover crop ground. The primary reason most people adopt cover crops isn't weed control, and that's fine. I don't care. It doesn't. We'll take the secondary benefits of weed control, but what something like a cereal rye cover crop does is you get a lot of biomass, so you reduce germination through. There's no light reaching the soil. But secondarily, certain cover crops, and cereal rye would certainly be number one on my list in this respect, it's got allelopathic properties. So you've got some chemicals there that are emitted from the roots that are inhibiting the growth of other species. We don't sell cover crops as a silver bullet either. They're going to break down over the season. Water hemp can germinate from April to August, September for that matter. And so as that cereal rye cover crop decomposes, there certainly can be additional germination later in the season. But we do sell, and when I say sell, you realize I don't sell anything. That's why I have the job I have. I'm a terrible salesman. But we do tout the benefits of cover crops early in the season and reducing germination of say water hemp early on. But probably the weed that it fits the best is mare's tail or horseweed. It completely matches the biology of mare's tail and horseweed. You know, that weed can come up in the fall or the spring as a little seedling and develops into a rosette. If you have the cover crop present and already there, it just simply is not going to come out. It's gonna crowd out any germination that would have occurred, and so it's definitely been a huge benefit for mare's tail to the point where I don't get hardly any calls anymore about that weed. And I attribute a lot of that to cover crops.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because that was a big issue 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Mare's tail.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's fantastic. It's fantastic. Now, how is See and Spray and robotics? How's that going to help us out?
Well, certainly it can reduce our pesticide load. Most of the time we say we start thinking of these precision sprayers. You're still going to be spraying. You're just going to maybe reduce the load quite a bit, or maybe you can spray something that you might not normally have been able to spray on a small area or something like that. But you're right. It doesn't really solve the problem with herbicide resistance necessarily. But there are some robotics that are, at least that I've read about, that are more like targeted tillage in a small area, cultivation of a weed instead of spraying of a weed, or even targeted electrocution or something like that of a weed. So there's all kinds of possibilities there, for sure.
Now, your Z is zero tolerance for resistant weeds.
Yeah, I know how hard of a sell that is, but I believe in it. And the reason for that is it's kind of a new message from me because I tell these groups, I've told you everything. You've heard me preach about resistant weeds and everything, and I've never used that word zero tolerance because I know how, I know how that's going to go over with a lot of farmers. But here's what I'm trying, the real message I'm getting across. What I say to farmers is zero tolerance for resistant weeds, because these new resistant weeds aren't like what Mom used to make. And what I mean by that, and the main educational point I'm trying to get across, is we have evolved into some new types of resistance for the past decade or so, particularly in water hemp and Palmer amaranth. All of our worst types of resistance that we're seeing now are metabolic resistance, is what we call it. If you go back to the 2003 when I was first here and we discovered that glyphosate resistant water hemp, well, there was already ALS resistance in the state of Missouri. So a lot of y'all, would know, like Classic and things like that. It's Pursuit and Scepter days, right? Well, all of a sudden, Scepter stopped working, and that's ALS. That's ALS resistance. Then we started spraying things like Cobra and Flex Star and things, and we started getting PPO resistance. And so by the time I got here, glyphosate was being used as the answer to water hemp that had ALS, PPO resistance. And then, lo and behold, we got glyphosate resistance. Well, all of those types of resistance are what we call target site resistance. And target site resistance is you have a little mutation in the enzyme, and that causes the resistance, and so the herbicide doesn't work anymore. And that's what we dealt with even with glyphosate resistance. In the worst years of glyphosate resistance, it was target site resistance. And what we dealt with for many decades, even before I got here and after, until the past, like I said, 6, 7, 8 years, all the things we're seeing now is no longer target site resistance, called metabolic resistance. And the significance of that is these are enzymes that are in the plant that are designed to chew up herbicides and make them inactive. So you spray it with 2,4-D, for example, and there's an enzyme that breaks up the 2,4-D and makes it an inactive product. You spray it with dicamba, and there's an enzyme that makes it an inactive product. And so when some of the worst kinds of resistance we're seeing now are 2,4-D resistance, dicamba resistance, HPPD resistance in corn, and group 15 resistance. So like metolachlor and things like that aren't working on water hemp in some places. Group 15 resistance. All of those are brand new types of resistance, and they're all metabolic resistance. So literally, in the past decade or so, the only thing we're seeing that is being discovered is metabolic resistance. And here's why it's not like what Mom used to make. Because with target site resistance, what did we always used to tell? The whole industry, everybody, the whole recommendation was the same. It was we spray multiple effective modes of action. We mix herbicides together, or we rotate herbicides. Because if I have an ALS-resistant water hemp, it doesn't mean that it's going to be resistant to glyphosate. Glyphosate should kill it. And so that's what our recommendation was, and that's what our recommendation still is. The thing with metabolic resistance is it can confer resistance across chemistries that have nothing to do with one another. You might have resistance to 2,4-D, and it might make it resistant to an HPPD or something else as well. Because those enzymes, they're designed to chew up anything that enters the plant, and if some little difference happens, those enzymes may attack different classes of herbicides. So it's truly extremely scary. Probably the best example that I can give you is, I think it's in Japan, a weed scientist just discovered a plant that's like a barnyard grass. And he found metabolic resistance that conferred resistance across 6 different classes of herbicides and 16 different active ingredients. Because it was metabolic resistance, it was resistant to 6 different types of things that had never even been sprayed on it before.
Oh.
So with metabolic resistance, you can have resistance to something that you've never even sprayed on the weed itself. It's all because of those enzymes have had some kind of change happen, and so we're truly scared on. And when we say zero tolerance, we're trying to get across to the farmers is we don't really have recommendations for you on what to do about metabolic resistance other than never expose the weed to the herbicide in the first place. That's the only thing I could tell you for sure will work. I can't tell you that rotating or mixing herbicides will even work, because it may not, with metabolic resistance. So truly scary stuff.
I hate to use that term, but it's almost like a super weed.
Yeah.
And that's been the threat for many years, that we could develop these.
Yeah. So one of our best molecular biologists in the world, we have weed scientists that kind of do field stuff like me, and we have weed scientists that stay in the lab and try to figure all these resistances out and everything. Pat Tranel at the University of Illinois, super, super smart guy, great, and is probably the foremost expert in all of this. He said, in a webinar kind of format just a couple months ago, he said we may be starting to see the end of the chemical era of weed control with this metabolic resistance, and that's a statement that no farmer wants to hear, right? And he's not saying that taking that lightly, and I don't think any of us would, but it's a truly unique situation we find ourselves in.
Wow, that's eye-opening.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah,
I was just reading this weekend that 2,4-D came out in the late 40s, atrazine in the late 50s. So we've been 80 years in the chemical world on herbicides. And I asked my dad one time, what did you do prior to herbicides? He said, we tilled a lot. He said you kept getting flushes of weeds, you tilled them, and then you planted them, and then just tried to stay on top of them.
Yeah, between row cultivation. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what's nice is that we do have some other tools in the toolbox. Your weed terminator, the electrocution, management. No-till makes a big difference.
Right.
Using cover crops, which, again, my dad said cover crops. We did that in the 1930s, so that was nothing new.
Yeah.
But so we probably need to revisit some of these things. that we've done all along to help control weeds and pests and other pests in our crops.
You bet.
When you mentioned that mare's tail, I was once told overcame its susceptibility to glyphosate by doubling its chromosome number multiple times.
Yeah, so it'll overproduce the enzyme that's being targeted. So you will see a little bit of injury. So say, for example, you have 1x, I'll just make it simple I can, of the number of EPSP synthase, it's the enzyme it targets. Well, it developed a mechanism that it'll produce like 15 times the number of those enzymes. So you just can't get enough glyphosate in there that will ever affect it realistically. So you might get just a little bit of mild injury or something, but it will just continue to keep on growing after that. Yeah.
Wow. It's all biology.
Yeah.
And nature wins in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we just have to...
Life finds a way.
It does.
To quote Jurassic Park.
and when you look at what the weeds are doing, they're just doing what we would do too, is to overcome this challenge.
Yeah. Especially, the example of metabolic resistance. Those enzymes have always been there to attack foreign substances that come into the plant. We keep on putting foreign substances into the plant. What are they going to do? They're going to find a way to attack them better.
Right.
So that's what's happening.
All right. We're just putting so much pressure on the system.
Yeah.
That we're essentially screening for these plants that are abnormal.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great way to end this podcast on. But is there anything else that you want to add that what you're looking for, what the future of the weed scientist, and maybe even this summer, this growing season, how should you plan? Just multiple actions. I guess we still got to go our old route.
Yeah. So the thing that scares me, just as a state extension weed scientist, is to hear. Like I said earlier, farmers got all these pressures and things to think about, and I get it. Economics is the number one thing they have to think about. But if it were me, I would not be talking about not spraying a pre-emergence residual herbicide because that's the actual, if there's one herbicide that's going to do the most for you, it's that timing. Mm-hmm. But there are times when I hear people saying, hey, I'm gonna give up on the pre and go with post only. The problem is our post onlys aren't working. They're the ones that are failing most often. You started out by saying you had a failure, right?
Yes.
Those are most likely the ones that are going to fail compared to your pre's. So I would not abandon the pre's. So that's one thing that worries me going into 2023. The other thing that worries me going into 2023 is, will we actually have shortages, or is that just something we're talking about? Last year we had actual shortages of herbicides. Farmers literally wanted to spray herbicide X. Usually it was Liberty, I'll just say it, and they couldn't get it. There's still some talk about that now. I don't know if it's real or whether it's just talk, but we want to put people in a situation where they can spray what they want to spray for efficacy. And then, of course, input prices. Input prices are going to affect every decision a farmer makes.
Right.
And so, it's not sounding too good. I'm not an economist, but I listen to them all the time, and not sounding too good.
So, Kevin, what would be the best way for a farmer to learn more?
Yeah, so certainly you can always call me directly. I give out my number all the time. An email is 573-882-4039 is my office. And if you talk to me long enough, I'll give you my cell too if you want that. But Bradley, KE at Missouri.edu. We also have weedscience.missouri.edu is our website. And I guess one thing I will mention, Tim, that I just thought about, we have a new weed control guide, actual book. It's I was blessed to be able to join my colleagues in an effort, because we just had struggles here with getting book's out, and there's a whole long story to that. But so starting in January, there is a Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Missouri weed control guide, and it's about, almost 2 inches thick, and it's for corn and soybean. And you actually go to Ohio State, their Extension Publications warehouse, their website and everything, and online to buy it. I think we're getting a link up to at Missouri to from our Extension Publications to there, so I hope we'll have that link shortly. But we do have a new book available that I've been trying to, that's been a problem for a while. We had a book of Missouri specific. It was a weed insect disease publication. I lost my insect and disease colleagues, and I couldn't find anybody that wanted to go together on that. So I went another route and decided to team up with some great weed scientists in other states and join their publication. So we're hoping people will like that new publication.
Wonderful. And this is something that you can get not only a physical copy, but also maybe just a online copy.
Yeah,
too?
You can get a PDF version of it. Yeah, when
Great.
you buy the physical book, I think there's an option to get that with it or something like that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. All right. Anything else, Kevin, before we sign off?
No, it's been a joy talking to you as always. You're the expert on all things weed management.
I am. Kevin always said getting ready for workshops, and he needs examples of overspray, underspray, mismanagement. He just follows me around. He finds it all. All right. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Glad to be here.